Whoa, flow, low, co, plo, mo, flow, show, to, plo. Episode 417 of an Unearthly podcast. Streaming live on the 24th of August, 2021, and featuring Sarah Jane Adventures, Prisoner of the Judoon, written by Phil Ford, and starring Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith, Tommy Knight as Luke Smith, Daniel Anthony as Clyde Langer, Anjali Mohindra as Ronnie Chandra, and Alexander Armstrong as the voice of Mr. Smith. I am Bill Sylvia, the writer in black, and I'm amazed that I did that in my first try. With me are Randy Ronson McCulloch.
You know, the Judoon would make fairly awesome death metal singers.
Thomas Fireheart.
Oh, well, thankfully I recovered enough that I could actually be here this week.
And speaking of recoveries, returning from 5 weeks away, Mad Matt Winchell.
I'm not dead yet. That which does not kill me makes me stronger.
Okay.
Apparently it leaves you a skeleton.
Rattle me bones.
By the way, I wasn't kidding about the Judoon being death metal singers. I mean, look at that introduction. Now imagine it being sung in a death metal song. Whoa, flow, low, co, plo, mo, flow, show, to, plo, do, plo.
If somebody gets rich off of that idea, we get some royalties, right?
No, the
Damn well better
BBC will, unfortunately. Well, actually, that might help the Doctor Who production.
Oof.
Considering the fact that the BBC keeps cutting their budget. Anyway, so how's everybody's week been?
So what you're saying is that the next Doctor is going to be stuck on Earth.
Maybe. We don't know. We don't know who the next showrunner is going to be.
We'll have to see. Anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm to the point where I feel like I can be on live shows a little bit. Hi. So I suppose people want to kind of know a little bit about my time away.
Might help, yeah.
Yeah.
So, long and the short of it, my mother somehow got COVID from somebody at work. She brings it home. Of course, she shares it with everybody else without knowing that it's COVID. And then she finds out it's COVID, which means the rest of us need to get checked up as soon as we start getting sick. We get checked up. It's COVID. I start having like stomach and sinus issues, but I never actually had like the lung cough, which is weird. My father has the lung cough to the extreme and is still recovering from it a bit. And my mom has it a little bit. Her big thing is air, which is also my big thing. I can't get up the stairs without getting winded.
Yeah, that's actually the major effect of COVID is breathing.
So after we find out we got COVID, we're all trying to basically nurse ourselves. My dad's having an easier time of it. We think it's due to some of his over-the-counter medications, actually, which might have helped him with that. We're not sure because they are like immune system stuff.
Possibly.
For me, I want to say after I found out I had COVID, it took like 2 or 3 days, and suddenly my oxygen levels were down to 85. For those that don't know, under 90 is bad.
Yeah,
85 is the worst anyone in my family had. So they took me to the hospital. They immediately put me in the mid-care. There's like 3 levels, which are all different floors in the hospital there. Top one is like, we don't really need to worry about you. Middle one is, we'll check in on you once in a while. And bottom one is the intensive care, and they're going to be checking on you frequently. They put me in mid-care. After about 2 hours there, they immediately take me to critical. Keep me there for about a week. Took me back to mid. After about a day, they took me back down to critical again for 3 more days. Find the game better enough that I go back to mid, and after 2 days in mid, they took me to the top, and 2 more days there. Finally, was looking like I was going to get out, and finally got out.
And then you spent what, a week and a half recovering since then at home?
And since then, I've also already worked a week at work, and I'm now in the midst of my second week, which is looking like hell week. I still need to contact my boss tomorrow to find out if that extra day on Thursday is happening or not, because they asked me for it, and then they still haven't updated. And also, as was kind of semi-mentioned, I literally got asked to come in an additional 2 hours today, so this is literally my longest day of the week at work. It was like, trying to think. It was supposed to be 4:30 to 9:45, and it got moved back earlier to 2:30. So additional 2
I
hours.
hate it when they do that. Well, you are working at a convenience store, so just remember you can always start looking at people and go, I'm not even supposed to be here today.
Ah,
I can officially do that on Thursday. Matter of fact, I question why I was even in earlier today, because apparently he'd already asked somebody else. I'm just like, great.
speaking of which, the third one is out next year.
I hear that.
Third
But
one?
we Clerks.
Ah.
You know, the thing that Kevin Smith is using his money from selling out He-Man to make.
Boo.
Yeah. That's kind of how we all feel, but...
Damn reason. Like, my kilobytes per second just keeps bottoming out.
The stream says unstable, but I don't know enough about Twitch to know if that's my end or yours.
Where does it say unstable?
Underneath the picture, it says unstable. Then my mouse over it says poor network connection detected. So that might mean it's me. I don't know.
Are you talking about Discord?
No, that's no Twitch.
Because I've never seen that on Twitch, but okay. Let me see if I can do something here. Really
it seemed to
quick.
be coming up fine for me.
Well, it
when
kind
I
of recovered
checked,
now, but
so-
I'm of the opinion I'm just gonna keep backing this down a little bit. Cause it seems to be having issues since I got back. Let's go there. Just go there and let's see if you'll just stay stable there. All right. Sorry, just want to make sure we don't lose things because suddenly the bandwidth had a hissy fit.
Right.
But anyways, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I did get to the point, like in the last 2 days, where they barely had to give me any air, as opposed to literally having me on 8 out of 10 air. If I got any worse, they would have actually literally put me on a machine. They did put me on one. Jesus, there it goes. Fine. God damn, what the hell? Stop disconnecting. What?
The router needs oxygen too.
It's gonna get a fucking club.
There we go.
And yep, I can see the thing
Yeah,
again.
looks like it's good.
All right. So, anybody else before we lose connection again?
So for my week, this was the start back of classes. This is a very unique semester for me. One, it's my first time being in person at Ohio University. Second, it's my first time teaching classes. I'm teaching a 1 credit course and I'm leading discussions on a hybrid course. So effectively, just due to the one course being bigger than the other, I have similar levels of responsibility for both, just in different ways. Um, so today was my first time leading those, and I think it went all right for a first time. Uh, I will, yeah, it's definitely been a busy day because I had a 9 o'clock discussion that I had to lead, including managing to get the door unlocked. Then I had a 12 o'clock virtual meeting, then a 1:30 class, then I taught a 3 o'clock class, and then I had an 8:30 virtual meeting, and then this. So I'm lucky I managed to time it well enough that I actually watched the episode and made a title card. Considering my Wi-Fi has been garbage most of the week.
All right.
Can't be any worse than my connection right now.
Yeah, I saw that brief bomb. My week's been largely uneventful. My friend Sammy has started a new game that they'd been working on for a while. And so we spent a couple days on that. Other than that, it's been pretty uneventful. I had because Aaron's now working split shifts, I've had to cancel some doctor's appointments and some other of my other games, so at least that's making up for it. How about you, Thomas?
Uh, well, it was fairly uneventful up until Saturday, when I took something for a cough I had, and then my body went, okay, turns out you actually have, a nasal drip, so we're gonna help get you to spit up, spit up some snot, and suddenly it was like, oh, that explains the cough. Except usually my nasal drip would be preceded by um I would be kind of fluey for a day or two, and then that. So it's like, I don't know what the fuck happened this particular time. Um and then I was probably at my worst on Monday. And I was just sleeping on and off throughout the day. And then basically yesterday and today of it's finally past the worst of it. Um so that was annoying as hell. I mean, it's funny because I went to the doctor's yesterday, and the doctor I saw wants me to get a COVID test. And I'm like, if it was COVID and I'd had it for long enough, then either A, the women I work with would probably be infected by now, because I also work as a cleaner in a shopping center, so there'd be a lot more than 0 cases in the state right now, because technically there would be more than that. And B, my mum would either be in hospital or dead, because my mum is one of those people who, if she gets it, she's gone. So
Yeah, like me.
yeah, so it's like, well, it's very clearly not COVID, which I didn't even think to say at the time to the doctor, because it's like, yeah, if I had it, I'd know, because my mom would have it and be dead. So, um, I'll probably still do the COVID test just to humor them anyway. But it's like, yeah,
Did you get
um,
vaccinated?
uh at least in my state, I don't currently qualify for Pfizer, and that's what I'm waiting on.
Oh, okay.
bothering with AstraZeneca. And
Because the reason I'm asking is apparently if you are vaccinated and you do get it, it's a lot milder than if you're not vaccinated and you get it.
mm,
It's if you get it when you're vaccinated, it's basically somewhere between bad flu and mild pneumonia. And of course, if you get it
on average,
unvaccinated,
anyway,
it's like severe pneumonia to
I
killing
was
you.
about to say, try saying that to my mother's coworker who was out for 2 weeks.
Yeah, there's definitely a range, but it's kind of like if it was going to kill you, it'll only hospitalize you. If it was going to hospitalize you, then it'll only be kind of bad. If it was going to only be kind of annoying, then you're probably not going to feel anything, sort of deal.
But yeah, like it's funny because I was just going and being like, well, here's this sinus infection crap that I pretty much always put up with. I mean, I was dealing with this shit like a month ago or so. I ended up having to take like 2 weeks off work, I think, at that point. And it was just typical sinus bullcrap that I deal with all the time. I just managed to sort of get it in reverse, in that it started as a nasal drip first, and then I got the flu-y stuff. And then by the time I got into the doctors, most of that had blown over, because that's always what happens with me. At least most of the time. So yeah, it was funny. And it's like, of course it was weird, because out of nowhere, she just asked to get my weight and height. And was like, oh, well, yeah, you're overweight. And I'm like, okay, tell me something I don't know. Like, I didn't even say that out loud, but I'm like,
I love
well,
doctors
yeah.
that tell you that like that's the cause of all your issues.
Right.
Yeah.
Can't sleep because you're overweight. Caught the flu, you're overweight.
Yeah. And the funny thing is despite the fact that I'm like 20 something kilo, probably almost 30 something kilos overweight, I'm probably the fittest to a point. I mean, I'm sick at the moment, but I'm probably like the fittest, most physically fit I've ever been in my life. So, I can't exactly run very far, but I can at least.
BMI is not a measure of health.
Yeah. Yeah, that
30
was kind of.
kilos, and I'm carrying around like 2 to 3 extra people in my weight.
I mean, like,
Anywho,
I'd even told her like that
we've
I
been
dropped like, God, I don't even know how much, probably like 10 kilos since the start of the year. So
anyway, let's move on to tonight's show, where we have birthdays, we have a little bit of news, we have a few pieces of geek talk,
and Constant Connection dips out. So let's hope that going to the web browser will help that.
and then Matt has a review of Shame, which we're really not going to shame him on. It's just where it fits. And then our summary, our review, our final thoughts, and our ratings. So let's get into it, starting with birthdays. The first birthday is on August 18th, and it is the birthday of John Debney, the composer for the 1996 movie. He turned 65.
The orchestral theme.
Yes, the orchestral version of the opening theme and everything else that came along for that particular movie. Next is August 20, and that's the big Doctor Who day for birthdays. Because first off is the birthday of Sophie Aldred, who played Ace from 87 to 89. She turned 59. On that same day is the birthday of James Marsters, who played Captain John Hart in Torchwood Series 2, also known as being Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He also turned 59. Also, that day is the birthday of Sylvester McCoy, who played the Doctor from 87 to 1996. He turned 78. And finally, it's the birthday of Anthony Ainley, who played the Master from 81 to 89, and he would have been 89, but he died in 2004 at the age of 71.
I always like to
And
imagine that on August 20, 1989, they brought out a huge cake to the Doctor Who set.
I don't know. I want to. Was Survival in production?
That's what
That
I've been
pers-
trying to figure out, and I don't know if there's a known date of when it was in production.
Yeah, because if it was, then yeah, they probably did. Because it would have been three of their lead stars all having a birthday on the same
It looks like
day.
they filmed it in June.
Okay, so probably not then.
Hmm.
They probably did bring out one for Sophie and Sylvester,
Mhm.
but still, it would have been interesting to have them all three there on their birthday. Anyway, the final birthday on our list is on the 22nd, and that's the birthday of James Corden, who played homebody Craig Owens in 2010's fifth series, and again in 2011's sixth series. That was, of course, in The Lodger, and trying to remember what the sequel episode was. I know it had to do with Cybermen, but I've lost the name of it.
Closing time.
Closing Time, yes, The Lodger and Closing Time. Anyway, he turned 43. So, once again, happy birthday to John, Sophie, James, Sylvester, Anthony, and James. Lost Stories, there's been nobody in Doctor Who production that died, although there have been some other famous deaths that have happened in the last 2-3 days. Anybody know today's famous death? Charlie Watts.
Oh, I think I've seen that, but I wasn't familiar with it.
He was the drummer from the Rolling Stones.
Oh,
that's right.
Dang.
Yeah.
I know
he died
Sonny
today.
Chiba's died a few days ago.
That was
Right.
the other one I was going to mention.
That one in particular has me down. I'm a fan of his older movies even.
Yeah, and that I
sucks.
think was actually I think he actually died of COVID.
Which that sucks if he went through everything at his age, because he was that good run age, if I remember correctly, if I'm not mixing up names. But still, COVID is one of the worst things to go through if it's actually to the point of a ventilator or whatnot.
Yeah, he got COVID in early August, and then he developed pneumonia from it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Gotcha.
he died from complications about 2 weeks after he was confirmed to have it at the age of 82. So yeah, and they're not saying what Charlie Watts died of, but I think he had an ongoing heart condition. So that's probably what killed him. So, other than that, there's been no Doctor Who related deaths that we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to the news, AMC Networks, who are the owners, or at least co-owners of BBC America, was releasing their summary for new things coming out for the fall season. And one of those things is season 13 of Doctor Who, listed as being fall 2001 or 2021. The description for this reads as follows. She's back. The 13th Doctor is returning for the 13th series in what is set to be a 6-part event serial. Since their last epic battle in Revolution of the Daleks, the Doctor, Jodie Whittaker, and Yaz, Mandeep Gill, have been exploring the universe together, but with the Doctor now questioning everything about her past, she will undoubtedly be searching for answers. This adrenaline-fueled, universe-spanning series will also see an addition to the TARDIS with actor and comedian John Bishop joining the cast as Dan Lewis, who will quickly learn there's more to the universe than he could ever believe. Jacob Anderson, Game of Thrones. Broadchurch is also set to make his debut on Doctor Who as recurring character Vinder. Vinder's new role will see him join forces with the Doctor, Yaz, and Dan as the Doctor faces her biggest ever adventure. Series 13 is set to introduce some terrifying new adversaries and return of truly iconic old enemies. Expect action, fun, scares, extraordinary new worlds as the Doctor and her friends confront a deadly evil. So that is the official blurb from AMC Networks. It's a lot of what we've heard before, but
that does seem pretty distinct in the difference between John Bishop and Jacob Anderson. So it does seem like Vinder is not going to be a companion, which
More
we were
like-
unsure about before.
probably more like a Captain Jack River song kind of thing.
Right,
Yeah.
or
He just
Brigadier,
pops.
or
Yeah. Like one of those ones where, depending on how things actually turn out, they could maybe be one of those gray area characters where, like, well, maybe they technically did travel in the TARDIS, but if this is supposed to technically be one very long story, then technically they didn't travel on the TARDIS between stories. Sort of a thing. Like it's
Apparently during the Comic-Con at Home panel, Chris Chibnall said about Vinder, he makes you root for him and he breaks your heart. So that does not bode well for the character.
that could mean either he betrays them or he dies or both.
Mm-hmm. So
and they actually say that in the article. Will something tragic to happen to him, or is he a betrayer?
yeah, I was going to say that's just basically what they said. And it also mentions it is a single story over 6 episodes. So it sounds like this will be kind of like Miracle Day, only hopefully better, although we won't know until
I'll
we see it.
withhold that particular distinction.
I mean,
Miracle Day
was rather long. I would say
yeah.
Dalek's Master Plan, but again, hopefully better.
Again, I will withhold comment.
I will remain hopeful until they disappoint me. And then
Also,
you will hear of my bitter disappointment.
Also, now that I've said that, it would be hilarious if Vinder turned out to be the monk, but I'm sure that's not going to happen.
No, they would say it's just the monk because he doesn't. They wouldn't have a normal name like that.
Either that or he's the master again going, fuck you. Yeah.
He'd have a weird ass, long, wonky name like Romana originally had. Until the Doctor just basically looked at her and went, I'm sorry. We're just going to call you Romana then.
Watch him just turn out to be the villain.
Backstabber. All right, next.
So, interesting, by the way. A Vinder means a maker, a Protestant, a person who grows or makes or invents things. Just food for thought before we move on. Okay, so that is all the news aside from Big Finish. Big Finish has 2 new releases coming out this week. First is from the 4th Doctor series, The God of Phantoms by Mark Platt with Tom Baker and Louise Jameson. This is from the Hinchcliffe Classics. And also Torchwood, Empire of Shadows by James Goss with featuring Sean Peaks. Sean Peaks is the person that played the leader of the expedition in suddenly I cannot remember the name. The Impossible Planet.
Yeah.
The one where they basically meet the demon thing. Yeah.
Giant devil under the planet.
And if you remember, he mentions he represented the Torchwood Archives, so now he's coming back to reprise that character. So those are our 2 new. Those are the 2 new Big Finish out. that is all the news we have, and we will move on to Geek Talk.
Alrighty.
And looks like first up is Bill.
Yes, so Superman and Lois finished airing its first season recently. And yeah, Superman and Lois is rather different from a lot of the CW shows. It is not a Monster of the Week format, which may be because they have a lot more confidence in Superman than they do in any of their other properties, or it may be just that they've developed an audience. Black Lightning was kind of serialized rather than being Monster of the Week as well. But Black Lightning was not. I don't think it was as successful as the other shows. However, even in Supergirl, it was made very clear that the CW assumes that their entire audience has watched all the Superman movies, which I get why, but that might be a bit of a stretch when much of the audience was born after many of those movies came out. But yeah, so it's a serialized story. Um, I it involves some comic elements that are definitely given an original twist, which makes me wonder if the part that I struggle the most to believe is from a comic. By which I mean they tend to sometimes treat putting a Kryptonian mind into a human body as if that somehow, as if the powers came with the mind instead of with the physiology. But I don't know enough about modern Superman comics to know if that was a comic plot or not.
Sounds
I
wonky
say-
either way.
recall it.
I will say I'm probably not the target audience for the show in the sense that I did not watch Lois and Clark. I did not watch Smallville. I did not watch any Superman movies before Man of Steel. That's not to say I hate the character. That's just to say that I don't get the lore. The only deep cuts I recognize are the
Bill,
ones from
you've never watched a Christopher Reed movie?
not until I subscribe to HBO Max, assuming they're on there.
Shame.
All
The-
of the Reeve movies
the-
are on HBO Max.
The only Superman deep cuts I really recognize are from the Death and Return of Superman,
Boo.
which they do have some of those, but I'm not going to go into any more details on that. This show follows the theme very much of fatherhood. There are terrible fathers, there are great fathers, there are bad fathers trying to be better. There are people needing different fathers in different situations. So it's really all about fatherhood and relationship between sons and fathers and daughters and fathers a little bit, and being better fathers and things of that nature. I think I said kind of that the premise of the show is basically that Lois and Clark have two sons, one of which is developing Kryptonian powers, one of which is not. And that's mostly how it runs for the beginning until they really kick into gear with the plot with the big bad. And I was struggling in the beginning because I'm at that age where I probably relate more to Lois Lane than to any other character in the show. I don't relate to teenagers that much anymore. But definitely once the plot got into gear, especially I did follow Lois for a while. Then it diversified the cast a bit more once it was more established. I would say it was pretty good. Again, if you're a big Superman fan, you'll probably get more out of it than me. But even as someone who's kind of mediocre on Superman, I would say I was pretty solid second half of the show.
Watch Superman 1 and 2.
Okay. Was there anything else to say, Bill?
No, I think that's about it.
All right. So we're moving on to Thomas.
Yep. So yeah, like on over the course of 2 days, I just randomly decided, fuck it, I'm gonna watch all of the original Planet of the Apes movies. And it was like I was just looking for something to watch because I just wanted to watch a movie and decided why not? I'll watch the original Planet of the Apes. And then just decided, fuck it, I'm gonna watch the original 5. It's like
Fell into
just
the ape
all
hole.
and it was funny because I realized how little of the original movie I was aware of beyond you know,
Damn them all to hell.
yeah, like get your paws off me, you damn dirty ape. It's a madhouse. I'm pretty sure I'd heard that quote before.
Mm-hmm.
And the you maniacs who blew it up. Damn you, God damn you all to hell. Which that's funny because I'd always heard the quote as damn you all to hell, but then in watching the movie, it's like no, he slips a God in there, so it's damn you, God damn you all to hell. So
I imagine if it was repeated like in parodies, some of them might have been a little touchy about the G word. I know some studios and some companies are just not a fan of it.
I mean, I forget if in Beneath they technically cut it out. Because that's kind of the funny thing is Beneath the Planet of the Apes opens with the ending of the of the original movie. Feel like the original holds up pretty well, I feel. And I was not surprised to realize that the Twilight Zone Rod Serling co-wrote, I think it was co-wrote the script for the original movie. So it's like, okay, yeah. Given how given how this goes, ultimately, it's like, yeah, that fits. And then you get to Beneath the Planet of the Apes, and I feel like this jumps the shark. Like, this is... Of course, it's funny, because the casting is so weird, because for the first 3 movies, you basically have lead human, like, playing human characters, actors, that could all be related. Like, Charlton Heston... in the first one, James Franciscus in the second one, and oh my god, what's his name? Whoever the guy is in Escape from the human that helps the apes out in that. Like all 3 of them could basically be brothers, and like people could say, well, they're actually all related, and I wouldn't bat an eye because they all look very similar. And it's just like, okay, was this just a late 60s, early 70s thing or what? Because
quite possibly it might have actually been an active decision just to have a similar looking lead guy.
I mean, in Beneath, in Beneath it feels deliberate because there is actual dialogue where the 2 apes from the first movie that return, that they're like, wait a minute, you look like that other guy, sort of a moment. And so it's like, okay, that seems intentional. But then they actually have a scene together near the end, and it's like, and they're kind of the human... God, it's so weird. It's so weird because suddenly, like, it's arguably already kind of ridiculous to have the whole kind of apes kind of evolve to the state of humans in society and all that sort of way. And then you throw on top of that mutated humans with psychic powers who worship an atomic bomb. And it's like, okay, I guess we're just rolling with this now.
I believe that was still technically part of the books, so... They were very brief, but I think they were part of the books.
Well, I'm only aware of the original book. I don't know if there was any after that, but yeah. At the very least, it's funny because it's just like, wow, this is an interesting plot development, I guess. But it also kind of felt like, okay, did we just jump the shark here with like a mutated humans with psychic powers that are ultimately? Because it's kind of funny because even they kind of point out it's like, well, all we can really do is create illusions, so we can't really actually fuck with anyone. So we're kind of defenseless because they don't
You know
have
what
weapons, I
happened,
think.
don't you? The creators of the Planet of the Apes series watched that episode of Star Trek, the original pilot, with the Telosians and went, "This is an interesting idea. Let's incorporate this into the next movie." Because it's the exact same freaking abilities. Psychic powers to create illusions. Only it makes fucking more sense in Star Trek because they're aliens.
Yeah, basically we're going on comic book logic of radioactivity somehow mutated them and gave them, in this case, ultimately very useless defensive superpowers, I guess.
In their defense, that was made in 1970, and that is the beginning of the camp era.
Yeah. But yeah, it's God, it is so weird. And then of course it's like the funny thing is I, by virtue of that, I started referring to this movie as Beneath the Planet of the Apes or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb.
Bomb,
Of
oh,
course.
bomb, oh glorious
Bomb,
bomb.
oh bomb, oh
but
glorious
all
bomb.
yeah, but also right at the end when it's just like fuck it, everyone dies, Earth gets blown up. I'm kind of like, I just kind of start hearing the Evangelion theme in my head because I'm like, oh, okay,
See,
we're
you
just
said
killing
Earth
everyone
blown
else.
up, and I immediately go, dun 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 dun.
No, you see, I don't, but I'm on the same wavelength as you, Matt. I go and I think to myself, what
From the
a
trailer.
wonderful. Because I remember that original trailer for the Hitchhiker's movie.
We'll see. I just go to the actual Hitchhiker's theme, so the Wandering Wizard or something like that. I forget what it's called, but yeah,
Journey of the Sorcerer by the Eagles.
Journey of the Sorcerer.
Yeah. And like, given I had no idea that's how Beneath Planet of the Apes ended. I mean, I knew Jack all going into that one by comparison. I mean, it was funny enough watching the original and being like, oh, the only scene I know like the full thing of is the final scene of the damn movie. It was like, okay. And then get to Beneath and they blow up the planet and it's like, okay, so wait, there's supposed to be 3 movies left. What the hell are we doing? And then it's like, oh, okay. You get to escape from Planet of the Apes, and suddenly, off screen, 2 of the previously established apes and 1 rando, because we need a red shirt, I guess, have somehow, and that's what's so funny in hindsight, is they try to be like, well, yeah, we actually repaired one of the crashed ships and left the planet because fuck it. And like the explosion somehow sent us back in time. But I'm also like, well, wait a minute. These apes weren't even aware of the concept of flight. And now you're telling me they were somehow able to fix a spaceship enough to. And like those spaceships are fucked. Like one sinks to the bottom of like a lake, and the other like is pretty fucked up, even though it's like all above ground. But so it's like, okay, I'll just run with it. Fuck it. But it's also just like, well, hang on. You actually think about it for anything more than a second, and it doesn't really add up with what they've pre-established.
Humans have done the same thing in sci-fi movies.
true, I guess. But yeah,
But
it's like
What you don't know is that there actually was a third expedition that landed safely, but they all were killed by the apes.
but yeah, it's like they somehow end up in then current day early 70s uh like LA, I think specifically.
Or Hollywood or something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Los Angeles Zoo, yeah.
Yeah.
So they're in LA.
And it's just like, okay, I guess we're just following them in like, hey, wouldn't it be wacky if they were in modern times? It's funny because this almost seems like the premise for a show. I mean, I know there is a 70s Planet of the Apes show, but this is such a premise for a show, not a movie, to a point. So I'm like, okay. Like, I could half see a sitcom where it's just them living in this hotel that they're given, because they're just treated like celebrities because they're talking apes. Except there's one guy who's like, but from the future they come from, apes rule humans, so we have to kill them now because somehow that'll prevent that from happening. Like, I don't know. But it's just so weird, and it's like ultimately it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because he's like, well, that's the future they came from, so I'm gonna try fucking them over and killing them so it can't happen. And well, we say goodbye to those two because they die by the end, but the kid doesn't, and the kid, ends up growing up with, Ricardo Montalban is not an actor I was expecting to see in these, but
Yes, now more Planet of the Apes with Khan.
yeah. But yeah, like he is God, it's so weird because he's a circus owner, but ultimately, if you look at like the newer movies, he's essentially James Franco's character from like Rise of the Planet of the Apes and I think Dawn of the Planet of the Apes in the newer set. Because Conquest of the Planet of the Apes and Battle for the Planet of the Apes are basically the basis for the current slate of Apes movies. There's like, yeah, Conquest is the kid grows up. It's funny because he's like originally named Milo, and then he gets named Cornelius, I think, after his dad, and then picks the name Caesar, which is the main chimp in the new one. So suddenly that was like, oh, well, that adds up. That's where they got that from for the newer lot. And, eventually he leads a revolution. So again, it's like, it's funny because, and it's very funny because it's very on the nose. Conquest is probably my favorite of these. But it's funny because some of the theming is so on the nose, like they make very obvious allusions to race-based slavery. I mean, like the one human who's willing to help Caesar out is a black guy who's working for these dodgy people. And it's very much like, when they're rioting and having their little revolution, he's the one to be like, hey, as like an answer, as someone who comes from like, a lineage that goes back to slavery, maybe this is a bit much, that you're killing all these people. And like, Caesar's just like, who gives a fuck sort of a thing at first, but then they're like, oh, we'll just fuck off for a while and let you blow each other up, and then we'll come back and essentially take over. Sure enough, in between movies, that kind of happens. Just humanity kind of blows itself the fuck up. They don't really explain why. But humanity, so, it'll have been a reason.
That and these were made during the Cold
and-
War, so
yeah.
Anything good happened.
Which
and just
I guess
nukes.
is actually the funny thing. Conquest of the Planet of the Apes is set in 1991, and by then they've already got apes as pets because the 80s had a virus that killed off dogs and cats just for some reason. And which is all kind of set up in Escape From because they kind of give a bunch of backstory of how society got to the point it was in the original movie. And then yeah, just in between Conquest and Battle for the Planet of the Apes, they just, the planet kind of gets nuked. And I don't remember how much of a time jump this is supposed to be, but Caesar now has like a wife and kid, and the kid's like, I don't know, maybe 10.
It's not exact. It
Like,
just says early 21st century.
yeah.
So about 10-ish
yeah.
years, maybe a little more.
Yeah. Like I would generally assume somewhere between now and like the past like 20 years. It's like definitely sometime after the year 2000. And they're like, there are still humans that have been mutated that are living under the city, sort of like beneath, but in this case there's no psychic powers. It's just like remnants of the assholes from Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. And it's ultimately a matter of some of the mutated humans just being like, hey, can we just like continue to live here and like not deal with them? But the guy in charge is a remnant from the dodgy organization in Conquest, so they're like, no, fuck it, we have to. And it's funny because I was almost thinking this was going to be a closed loop kind of a thing. Like they were just, self-fulfilling. This is going to be how, in this version of the timeline, they decide, well, fuck you, humans. You're going to piss off over there, and we're not going to have anything to do with you anymore. But it ultimately ends up being, oh, yes, we can actually live together in peace because I killed this one asshole gorilla off. And we managed to kill all these humans off who were actually being assholes. So it's like pretty much every movie up until now has had either a depressing ending or just a very like, it depends on where you sit kind of an ending. And this is the first to actually have like, oh, okay, cool. I guess we fixed the we've modified
to be
the
honest,
timeline.
even this kind of has a depends upon where you sit kind of ending because the last frames of the movie are literally a zoom in to the statue of Caesar and he's crying. The question is why?
Yeah.
Is he crying
that
because
in
he's
its own right
happy
is
and
kinda
things are
weird.
succeeding, or is he crying because is he aware in the afterlife that things are doomed to repeat?
Yeah. I mean, there is that. It is kind of that tone of like, well, things might go to shit eventually, but they're good now.
They're currently good, yes.
Sort of a thing, yeah.
And you didn't think you'd have all that much to say about each individual movie.
Well, yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like, I thought I'd
we're,
be
t-
going
we're,
on.
we're talking about Thomas here. He can ramble
yeah.
on this movie.
Like, I thought I would be going, like, skimming over them a lot more, but yeah, like, it's interesting watching all of these in hindsight and going, like, realizing, oh, I didn't realize there'd be this much political theming in these. I'm not really surprised in hindsight, but it was like, oh, okay, there's a lot. I mean, friggin' Conquest, the villains in Conquest basically are Nazis to the point that they have very like obvious, like the sort of security guys they have are basically dressed as Nazis, and it's really like, what? Okay, that's a bit on the nose, but yeah. Yeah, ultimately I do not regret watching these. But some are definitely a lot better than others. I feel like the original and Conquest are my favorites. And I'd probably put Beneath like at the bottom, but only just because it's so jump the sharky feeling to me.
See, that's not my problem. My problem is that it was boring as a kid, but maybe I could watch it now. I haven't tried yet.
Hmm.
Anywho, are you done?
Yeah, compared to the first one, the second movie is a little slower
Mm-hmm.
paced.
Hmm.
Are you done?
Yeah. I'd just say like I feel like these movies have for the most part aged a lot better than I thought they might have, given the time they came out. But yeah, like I would definitely say these are actually worth checking out, especially if you're people who are like me, were previously only familiar with the newest set of Apes movies. And you can see some of where the inspiration came for the current reboot run of it.
All right.
All I know is
So-
that Roddy McDowell never lived down those roles. He was known as the ape for the rest of his life.
Well, yeah, he was like the only consistent actor in every movie.
Yes, he was. He wasn't in the second one, but he was in every other one, including the series.
Yeah, including the
Are you
TV
sure
series.
he wasn't? Because the character he played, Cornelius, was in.
They got a
the
guy who
first
could sound
two.
like him a bit. I believe he had a contract
Okay.
somewhere else at the time.
Mm,
So they got a sound. So
okay.
they got a sound alike that played him for one movie. And even the people who were a part of the first one were like, it's the best we can do right now.
Yeah, that was David Watson, who
I guess that might
isn't known
explain
for
why he
much.
was. Yeah, I guess that might explain why he was in it so little.
Yeah, that would
Yeah.
explain why he was cut down.
Mm,
But yeah, after that, it's just like he was typecast as the ape guy.
mm,
And then did little bits here and there, but never really got anything big
Yep.
afterwards. Anyway,
Yeah, they kept trying to relaunch Planet of the Apes in the 80s, but it just kept falling into development hell. And Roddy was kind of hoping because it would, put some bank in it. It put some cash in his bank
mm.
because he couldn't get any work otherwise. Anyway,
Yeah.
yes, anyway. Star Trek.
yes. So, like many of us, I remember the 2009 J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie. And I remember, even though it's false, I came out of that movie with a big smile on my face, loving it. It's the only movie my mother and I actually saw in the theaters 3 times, because she would pick me up for something or I'd pick her up for something, and we'd look at each other and go, "You want to see Star Trek again?" And I'd go, "Yeah!" And we both loved it. But I was not a critic back then. So I figured I would go back, take off the rose-colored glasses, put on my critic monocle, and take a look at this movie, because although we loved it, if you look at the rest of the trilogy, you have the first movie, and then you had the second movie, which bombed so hard the third movie couldn't even recover from it, and pretty much killed the franchise. I've heard they're planning on making a fourth one again, but we'll see. But in that case, let's go and once again take a look at 2009 Star Trek. Now, if any of you haven't seen this movie, I mean, it is 15 years old. I'm going to cover the bases really, really quick. Basically, a ship, the Kelvin, investigates a rift in time in which a huge-ass ship comes through, blasts their ship to hell, kills James T. Kirk's father, and his mother barely escapes while giving birth to Kirk. Kirk grows up bitter at the loss of his father, and only from the pleading of a captain, Christopher Pike, enrolls in Starfleet. 3 years later, he's involved in the little scandal of reprogramming a simulator to win a scenario that's not supposed to be winning. But instead of getting a commendation for original thinking, like in the original timeline, they get news Vulcan's being attacked right in the middle of it. On the way, Kirk, who is smuggled aboard, hears the term lightning in space, which was the same effect that happened when his father was killed. He informs the captain, and sure enough, they come into the midst of a battlefield. They are overpowered and told that the captain must surrender to them. The captain does, but in the process sends Kirk and crew down to destroy this giant platform that's blasting away at the planet. They do, but it's too late. And these people, who are Romulans, drop basically a bomb into the center of the planet, just basically destroying it in about a minute. Spock beams down to the planet and saves most of the Vulcan High Council, except his mother, who dies just before transport. Grieving, he decides to rendezvous with the rest of Starfleet, but Kirk says they should go take off after this guy, even though they're gloriously outpowered. He has a fit on the bridge, and Spock then blows him out of an airlock onto a planet where he meets old Spock, who tells him he must get back on the ship and take control. They meet up with Scotty, who beams them all back to the Enterprise, and Kirk takes control. They go face the Romulans, defeat them, get a hold of this big bomb thing, and use it to blow the Romulans to hell. Pretty much the end of the story. Oh, and they give Kirk the captaincy at the end of the movie. Well, besides the reasons I thought I would dislike, I had issues with this movie, being the fact that in the course of a week tops, Kirk goes from cadet to captain. I thought that would be the main thing I wouldn't like about this movie. I was wrong. And with the blinders gone, I was able to take a closer look on why this movie actually doesn't work. It's not the whole cadet to captain thing, although that's absolutely horrible. That's just an excuse for them to get everybody into their old positions as fast as possible. What I realized watching this movie is that the creator, director J.J. Abrams, copied the characters, their personalities, their mannerisms, without copying the soul, without doing the research for why these characters have worked so well together, that they have captivated audiences for, at this point, it would have been 30 years. He got the characters, and he made, in some cases, flanderized versions of the characters. James T. Kirk, when you look at him, is actually nothing like James T. Kirk from the original series. He's the caricature of James T. Kirk. He's the James T. Kirk everybody thinks is James T. Kirk, but isn't. He's blatantly disregarding the rules, even when the rules make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And is hitting on anything that moves and is female in the way that you would expect from Beavis and Butthead. There is literally, or actually closer to Glenn Quagmire from Family Guy.
Yeah.
There is a season he's just walking downstairs, looks at a pair of cadets and goes, "Hello, ladies." And I'm like, that's not the Kirk that actually existed. The Kirk that, was in the TV show had women attracted to him because he was a charismatic leader.
Mm-hmm.
This guy actually comes forward as an asshole, a self-absorbed asshole, and no, that doesn't fit the role they need him to fit into. The character they got closest to correct is Spock, because they get him agonizing over Vulcan versus human, and they still managed to fuck that up a little.
Because they had Leonard Nimoy on set.
Yes, that's mostly why. Because for whatever reason, they decided he was having a relationship with Uhura, which comes out of the fucking blue. McCoy, they get the mannerisms right, they get the speech right, but the terms when McCoy would use this were used incorrectly. Scotty sounds right. even to an extent, looks right, but he seems to be more interested in getting an excitement and praise for himself instead of the Scotty that we know from the series, who basically wouldn't have cared about anything for himself as long as you didn't diss his ship.
Don't you diss my baby.
Yeah.
As he
So-
is swiping down one of the pipes for no reason.
Most of the other characters are purely secondary in their roles, as they mostly were in the original series. So their defects, while still there, are minor. That does play off Chekhov as being a boy genius, which we never really saw in the original series. And I still admit to this day, if they could have hired somebody who looked the least like Walter Koenig, I don't think they could have found anybody more less look likable than Koenig than the guy they got. So my problem it's basically it's Star Trek with the heart removed. The reasons that these people became a unit is not present. You're trying to take this arrogant, self-absorbed asshole and make him into a leader of men when he never actually learns to care about anybody but himself.
Mm-hmm.
Because every time he's in there, he's always right.
So basically, this is what happens when someone who only knows the surface level of, oh, this is something people like about this, is given
Is given
Is
full
given
reins.
this, yes.
Yeah.
The thing
Yes,
is,
JJ
he came into the movie like, I want to get Lucasfilm's attention. What do I need to do that?
Mm-hmm.
That's technically true
that's
too.
that's the wrong mentality to go into this. The mentality should go into this, I want to make a good movie. I want to make a movie that the fans and this will know and get Lucas's attention. And, he should have spent more time doing research instead of basically looking at the Wikipedia articles on the characters and going, okay, I have enough to make a script.
Lens flare. And shoot it like it's porn.
Which is kind of funny, because the first one that he either wasn't as involved, I think it was like with Star Trek Beyond, was that the first one he didn't direct, or the first one that he
Correct.
just wasn't as involved? Well, there you go. So basically, it was like they finally got someone who, because I remember even as someone who had not watched pretty much any Star Trek prior, when I watched Star Trek Beyond, even I came out of it like, oh, so this is just a movie budget episode of Star Trek to a point.
Which isn't a bad idea.
And it was, and Beyond, it is arguably the best of the three movies. Because it had the most heart in the characters. The first one, like I said, is J.J. Abrams going, let's make a movie establishing these characters. Let's do the minimum amount of research we need to make the characters.
Just go, 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 go.
Mm-hmm. And let's completely break any kind of logic about how the universe should work. Oh, hey, we can get Leonard Nimoy? Okay, we'll do a time warp thing.
What's that? We can do a sequel and piss on Khan's legacy too? Let's go.
Well, yeah, the whole thing is the sequel. Okay, well, people are expecting us to do Wrath of Khan. Let's do Wrath of Khan with a twist. And
it's not a twist.
Was terrible.
The twist is that shit.
So the third movie, they got, people that were actually involved in it. And I mean, even, one of the writers said he was more of a Star Wars person than a Star Trek person than that, but he at least was the guy that played Scotty in these. So he was at least involved in the characters, and he did the fucking research. And so you have Spock and McCoy in there actually acting like Spock and McCoy. That part of it was great. Mind you, some of the rest of the movie's mediocre as fuck, but you got that relationship that actually seemed to feel like classic Star Trek. And every now and then in the 2009 movie, there was a moment that felt like classic Star Trek, but it was only like a line or two,
Like a brief heartbeat, and
and
then
then
it
it was
goes right
gone.
back.
Mhm. Goes right back to being soulless. Like the only time I remember really feeling it is there's a scene where McCoy is talking to Spock on there, and it's just like, can I speak freely for a moment? Of course, Doctor. Are you out of your Vulcan mind? And I'm like, okay, that actually feels like what McCoy would do. I'll remind you guys, I am a huge Star Trek geek, or at least was. So I live and breathe these characters in the 90s.
Hardly unlikely the response to you, Doctor, when you keep coming at them with your snakes and rattles. And then
He's
just
not
quietly walks
the
away.
Spock is not quite as angry in that as he should have been, but the McCoy parts were done really well. But still,
Well, even when Spock was angry with him, he always had this very monotone take to it.
oh yeah,
But he
I mean,
he
he's
still
not.
wouldn't pull from those punches.
Yeah, that's the thing. He doesn't really punch hard in this one.
Mm.
But still, that they don't know each other as well in this, so I can take that as well. And McCoy would still be as opinionated then as he would be before, because that's just McCoy.
Mm-hmm.
So I understood that part, but it actually felt like a Star Trek dialogue as opposed to most of the rest of the dialogue in here, which felt, they were getting the mannerisms, but they weren't really getting the thing. Like there's a part where Kirk actually says, "Who is that pointy-eared bastard?" And McCoy goes, "I don't know, but I like him." And I'm like, well, that's the exact opposite usual McCoy reaction.
Yeah.
And I mean, you got moments. McCoy rattling on about how space is disease and death when you first meet him felt like you were listening to DeForest Kelley channeling through Carl Urban. And that line was correct, but then you get into the next part of it and you're just like, and we're back to mediocre. And that's the thing. It makes the motions, but doesn't really invest in the soul. And those flaws became even more apparent in the next movie. So, looking back, the 2009 Star Trek isn't the brilliant remake that everybody thought it was in 2009. It's kind of mediocre and a little bit soulless, which is really, when you think about it, J.J. Abrams in a nutshell. That's all I have to say. I was just looking back on it. All right.
Alrighty.
So now
final
it's time for
thing.
the review of Shame.
Yep,
Okay.
review of Shame. So, me, Sarah Jane Smith. Oh God, I forgot what the title was again.
The Temptation of Sarah Jane Smith.
The Temptation of Sarah Jane Smith. So going through general likes, dislikes first. General like, I like that the henchman has the villains period. The villains period seem to have a lot more going for them in this one. It seems like the trickster actually has a plan, and it seems like the trickster's minions actually have something to do other than hassle the kids. I definitely like that about this one. General thing I didn't like. It was very easy to see that this is a trap, and yet Sarah Jane just digs her head deeper and deeper into this trap. It's just like, oh no. It's a little bit nitpicky, but yeah, she fell for it really easy. It just wouldn't let go. Trying to think. So, good moments and bad moments. Good moments. When her parents realize what's going on, and they willingly go off to stop the trickster. basically by sacrificing their lives to save their daughter and save the universe, or at least Earth, I believe in this particular instance. The moment I didn't like. I actually can't think of a moment I didn't really like. Nothing's coming to me, at least at the moment. Yeah, I'll have to go with that. So final thoughts. Really like that the villains actually got to step up their game, because previously when we've seen these villains, they've been really kind of one note and boring. Sarah Jane is a little bit overly gullible, but she's still trying to play it as safe as she can until she oversteps her bounds, and we quickly find out where that is. The kids are still generally pretty good actors. As a matter of fact, everyone in this is doing a pretty decent job, all considering. Even the addition of Sarah Jane's parents and some of the extra villagers that get tied to them. Story was pretty solid and had its own particular logic that worked well for it, and did tie back to some previous stories as well. And I guess with that, I'll just go into a rating. Oh, is this close enough for a 5? I don't know. It is really good. I'm gonna say at least a 4.5.
So 4.5 rating changes us from a 3.0 to a 3.38. If you're curious, that's two 4.5s, a 2.5, and a 2.0 altogether.
Wow.
So
we're very
pretty wide
different
gulf
sides.
in the middle there.
Very different sides about this, apparently. Okay.
Yep, you started with Thomas, and Bill is the low marker there with the 2.0. I think I said that mine was a low 2.5.
Yeah.
Bordering on a 2. Because, yeah, we had some issues.
Me and Thomas will just have fun watching.
All right. Well, that's going to take us into the episode. And about time, because we're like almost an hour and a half into the podcast at this point.
Part of that was yelling at Matt's router.
Well,
True.
Some of that, yes. Speaking of which, how's it been going? It's been going-ish. Yeesh.
Yep. How is your voice, Matt?
Why?
Because technically you're supposed to be the one to do the summary this week.
Oh, okay.
Just give me a moment here. Come on. You ready?
Yep, I'm going to play this by ear. I'm not even going to put up the timer on my end.
All right. And 3, 2, 1, go.
The usual suspects of Bannerman Road will appear at Sarah Jane's place just as a meteor goes overhead. Turns out that the meteor was in fact actually an alien spaceship, and they find out very quickly that it was a Judoon spaceship. Apparently there was another alien on board which escapes on a pod that was separated from the rest of the ship, and the Judoon is already giving chase to this alien who is apparently a world destroyer. He manages to separate the team. One half of the team going after the Judoon to try and keep him busy and hopefully not killing humans, while the other half tried to stop the World Destroyer so he can be more easily captured and things can peacefully end here. The World Destroyer instead manages to capture Sarah Jane Smith and uses her body, because he can apparently teleport into other people's bodies and control them, and decides to head off and get a what was it? a nanite thing that Sarah was investigating earlier, and actually alter its programming so not only would it be useful for him at least once and make a spaceship, but then he could just use it to scrap the entire planet on his way out. Because that's just what he does. The kids eventually gather back together. They managed to convince the Judoon they were going to help him try and find the World Destroyer. They first stop at Sarah's place, where they pick up the trail, and from there they figure out where the creature is going and what his plan most likely is, after also finding plans for the spaceship. They get there after also stopping a bomb from Mr. Smith that was set up.
What we liked about this episode, and Thomas, you are first.
Hmm?
Thomas, you are muted. Thomas.
I specifically was pausing what I was doing because I was like, oh shit, am I still muted? Because I was probably muted while I was coughing. But I was still thinking, so I didn't technically say what my favorite thing was and then have to repeat it. So let's see. Honestly, I would say the Judoon. Just in the context of a show aimed at a younger audience and the way they portray them in this, it works and is actually pretty fun.
Yeah, they're almost more comedic.
Just as a
There's
hint.
several times, especially where the Judoon interact with other people.
Mm.
That
So
are
you
just
definitely. Oh, go finish what you're saying. Sorry.
like the scene where they're at the stoplight and the guy pulls up with the loud radio and he just leans out the window and points the gun and says, "You are playing that above a legal volume," and the guy's like, "Fuck!" and turns it down, and then he goes, "Have nice day," and then goes on.
Yeah, so you definitely took mine on there, but I strongly agree. A lot of the time we've described the Judoon as basically the Ogrons without Daleks. And the problem is the Ogrons kind of need the Daleks to be interesting, which leaves the Judoon normally in a pretty awkward place of just, not being all that compelling as characters. And adding in the comedy here, I think, does a world of good for a Judoon driven story.
It does. Definitely does. All right. Matt, how about you?
General overall thing I liked. Actually, the visual effects weren't too bad. They were used sparingly and they were used effectively, as far as I recall. In particular, I can't remember his real name, but the World Destroyer's ability to walk into people and take them over.
All right.
Oh, and the nanites too.
Androvax
All right.
is his name.
Yep. Androvax the Annihilator.
Yep.
By the way, I need to update you guys. I was just told we need to really hurry this up because we could lose connection completely at midnight.
Oh,
okay. All right. So, Bill, hurry.
Please
okay, so I'm going to. I'm going to say Elizabeth Sladen as Androvax. She really puts extra effort, extra oomph into the portrayal, and it's really makes it a really interesting and layered performance.
Okay, I actually liked the Ronnie's parents subplot and their ability to work together in this, yet being completely opposite people. All right. Didn't like Thomas. Remember, short and sweet.
Yep. I would say the effect, like the whole tongue thing with the alien, both
That was
the
one of the
alien
visual
doing
effects
it and
that didn't
Sarah
always work.
Jane.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really go back to it a lot, and it's just no.
All right, Matt.
The general thing I didn't like. It seems. No, that's more of a. God, I can't think of anything fast. Pass.
And passed. Bill.
So this is mostly a nitpick, but Clyde continuously antagonizing the Judoon was kind of annoying. He just needs to learn to shut up.
Yep. I will also pass. I'm going to skip favorite scenes at this point, and I'm going to go straight to ratings as we've got about a minute. So,
Favorite scenes is
Thomas.
basically discussion of the other stuff anyway.
Ooh.
Give it that point or
What was
keep
that,
moving
4?
along.
Oh, sorry.
We'll probably just go with a 4 for now.
Okay, Matt.
Trying to think number for this one. I agree with the 4. Yeah.
Okay.
I think
Bill?
I'll give this one a 4.5. Pretty solid. A lot of things to like.
I will agree with Bill. 4.5.
Okay.
That will give us an average of 4.25.
And
Which
if
will
we
place
have time, if we're still connected, we can at least figure out where that listed. But otherwise, thank you everyone for watching.
It's 123 out of 400 things reviewed. Bill, close us quick.
Yes, please leave comments below, and don't forget to like the video, subscribe to get our exports on YouTube, and follow us on Twitch to get our streams every Tuesday night.
All right, next week we'll continue Sarah Jane, hopefully with more time, with The Mad Woman in the Attic by Joseph Blitzer and starring Elizabeth Sladen and crew.
And hopefully we'll be able to start earlier. Good night, everybody.